Anybody mind if I sit down on my chair? If there's anybody that can't see me, well, you're probably the lucky ones, but if you can't, I would suggest you move. Do I still sound like the same person? Louder and improved, huh? Cool. That's the only disadvantage of being first, is all the logistics have to come in place. But I want to warn you, especially you guys right down here, I've got new teeth. Okay, I'm not totally used to them yet, so if I lose control, you guys may get bit. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. When we were driving out, I live in a little town called Gigantopithecus up next to the Cascade Mountains. And as we were driving over here tonight, I rode with Barb Shoup, squatching with Barb and Gabby, my bestest friend. Okay. And I made mention of the fact that when my stepson was like 14, 15 years old, he was getting ready to go to a dance at our church. And he says, you know, Tom, he's I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I said, why is that, Lance? He says, tonight I get to go where every friend I have on earth is. That's how I felt about coming here this weekend.
Awesome.
I've sponsored 2 of these events this year myself, one in Enumclaw, one in Georgia, and I want you to know that this is my favorite.
Awesome.
Because we get the greatest people in the world here.
You got that.
That's my table over in the corner. I'm there to talk to people. If you have questions, come see me. I may not give you an answer, but I might be able to point you in a direction to look. Okay? If you have something you want to share, oh, I'm all ears for that. Okay? I want to thank Johnny for having me. You know, I seem like I kind of feel like I'm a fixture here. I keep coming back every year.
Awesome.
But it's fun. It's great. And I want to dedicate tonight's presentation to a friend. We lost her last year. She was the second half of the Squatching with Barb and Gabby group. Gabby was a very special dog. She wasn't our dog, we were her people. And she looked out for us. All you had to do was watch Gabby and you knew where the Sasquatch people were. She'd point them out to you in an instant. Gabby's gone now, but she has a replacement. Goldie is coming on strong. She's smart as a whip. Barb told me a story on the drive over here. Barb was gathering up her cats to put them in their cages to move them up to the cabin so they could be taken care of for the weekend. Goldie, when she saw what she was doing, went over to the cat's cage and pressed her foot on the button to open the door for her. Now that's all right, isn't it? We are, I always do this. I forget what I'm doing. I start talking. Tonight we're going to talk about more or less what Sasquatch is and more what he is not. Let me preface this by telling you, I have 61 years of experience in researching this guy. That's more than most of you have been alive. Actually, it's more than I've been alive, I think. But it's been wonderful. Some people will tell you what he is. He's an ape. He's a devil. He's a demon. He's a fallen angel. He's Nephilim. When these people say that, my first question is, what's your experience? What's the nature of your sighting? There's a few different ways we can view him. First, we're walking in the woods and we see the brush rattle. We see a dark spot and we think, oh my heavens, that's Sasquatch. I know people who have done this, and then they come back and tell me how he raises his family. Believe it or not, there is a Sasquatch in that picture. You can see him drive while you're driving your car at 65 miles an hour down the highway. But that's not going to tell you a lot about him either, is it? See him on a hike, he's 2 ridges away. I have a good friend whose husband had this happen. He estimated it was 1.5 miles. You ask him today, and he'll tell you how they have their children. Remember this, we are the sum total of everything that has gone before us in our lives. There were a group of psychologists who did a test in Seattle on some inner city ghetto youth. They showed these youth a teddy bear. Didn't take me long to screw that up, did it? They asked these children what they were seeing. Over 90% of them identified that teddy bear as a rat. Why? Rats they knew. Teddy bears they didn't. If you go in the woods looking for a Sasquatch, expecting him to be a monster, when you see him, what are you going to see?
Monster.
You're going to see a monster, aren't you? If you're expecting him to be benevolent, you're going to see something benevolent. But if you want to know how to learn what Sasquatch is, emulate those two. Dr. Jane Goodall, Dr. Diane Fossey. Get with them, sit with them, watch them, observe them. Oh, that can't be done. Horse apples. Can too. I've done it. At least 7 times I can tell you about. I've sat for a half an hour or more and watched them. I've observed them. Once with 18 of them together. If you don't think it's worth it, live for that. That's this old friend of mine. Little Cottonwood Creek, about 35 miles south of the Dalles in Oregon. That's how I research. Notice the Kindle in my hand? The Diet Pepsi sitting on my right hand? In my field chair? What you don't see there is the cooler down the side with the fried chicken and the boiled eggs. But they're there. If you do that, you don't have to go chasing around the woods. They'll come see what you're doing. If banging on a tree or hollering in the night is all you care about getting from them, then bang on trees, holler in the night. They'll answer you, guaranteed. They'll do it. But if you want more, if that's what you want, it ain't on Facebook. It is not in YouTube. Now, does that mean there's nothing good on YouTube? Of course not. Of course not. These are just a few of the channels that I check regularly. Bill Mound. When Bill says it, it's gospel to me. Sam Ritchie, wonderful channel. My old research partner Brian Bland. Crazy as a pet coon, but more fun than a barrel of monkeys. Ask Barb and Gabby's group. They got to go spend time with him this last September up in BC. Didn't think I was going to get some of them back. Thinker Thunker. Is he always right? No, he's not always right. But is he always thinking? Yeah, he is. Barb and Gabby, you'll never find better. Leanne Carnegie. I can't remember exactly what her title is. Southern Ontario Sasquatch, that's what it is. She runs a Facebook group called Bigfoot Without Borders. She does some of the best journalistic work on structures that you'll ever find. Her cabin is 100 miles from the next cabin. It's on Crown land. Nobody's even allowed to camp there. So she's isolated. And she has some beautiful stuff. Oh, and then there's this big guy that has a channel that's got 8 or 9 videos on it too. You might want to check that one out. Videos to watch, I get this all the time. How can you tell me something to watch to show that they're real? Number 1, Mr. Bob's work. Patterson-Gimlin film. Number 1, there's nothing better. Anybody that doesn't believe that film, don't come to my table. Because you'll get chapter and verse. Talk to Bill Munns about it. He didn't break that film down frame by frame. He broke it down layer by layer of emotion in the frames. You know what he said? It would be absolutely impossible for a human being to do what that thing did in that film. You know the other part that proves it? Mr. Bob Gimlin's a man. He's 100% cowboy. There's no backup in him, and there's no coyote in him. Now, if you're not a cowboy, maybe you don't understand those. If you come back by my table later, I'll explain them. But when he speaks truth. The stuff that he and I have suffered over the years from people that don't know. You know what would happen if you called a cowboy a liar about 150 years ago? You'd out of a 44 caliber sized slug right through the middle of you. Because your word, you bond. You live by your word. And I pray that we could return to those days when people lived by their words. When they had respect for one another.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Now we live by politicians' words.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a clear picture of Sasquatch. Anything wrong with any of those? Is there anybody that cannot see the Sasquatch in those pictures? You know what I did to those pictures to make them more crisp and clear? I sized them down to where they're supposed to be. Patterson-Gimlin film was shot on 16 millimeter film. You know how big 16 millimeter film is? Gee, I wonder why when I blow that thing up to screen size, it's glory. It's just like training a dog. The first thing you have to know to train a dog is more than the dog. Is he biblical? What is biblical? How many versions of the Bible are there? Do you know there are 27 authorized versions of the Catholic Bible? There are 127 versions of the non-Catholic Bible. Does it make a difference? If I press the advance key rather than the pointer key, it'd help. Let's look at, this is Genesis 6, verse 4. King James Version, New World Translation. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. And when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were men of old, men of renown. Now, everybody I've ever heard who says they're demons, they're fallen angels, they're Nephilim, cite this verse. Why can they say that? Because look what it says in the New World Translation. But Nephilim were in those lands. Where did that come from? That was translated by a coalition of people commissioned by King James V in the 16th century. They went to the ancient Hebrew, they went to the Greek, and they translated it. This was translated from that. This was somebody's view of what that should have said. There really is only one Christian version of the Bible if you want to read what was in the original script. Does that mean they were 100% correct in their translations? No. But it does mean they're the most correct that's available. Okay? Right button this time. They're apes. Do you know that apes have no chin? Sasquatch do. Very pronounced. None of the great apes have external lips. Sasquatch does. You and I do. Great apes do not have sclera, whites in their eyes. Sasquatch does. I've seen them. Great apes are not capable of articulated speech. They can make howls, they can make noises, but they can't make speech. Oh, they're a remnant of Gigantopithecus blackie. See that figure with Bill Munn standing next to it? I talked to Bill about that in 2013. He was a keynote speaker at a conference like this in Kennewick, Washington. He says, when I put that together, he says, I did that entirely from my own mind. He says, we only have 3 inches of jawbone and some teeth. That's the only remnants we have of Gigantopithecus. From this, people have construed this. Point this out. Pardon me, you probably can't see my computer screen. Is that real? No, that's a guess. They have no idea whether he was a quadruped or whether he was a biped. In fact, his DNA that they've just been able to extract from the teeth shows him as related to orangutan, not Sasquatch. This is something I get accused of a lot. The woo, whatever that is. I get excoriated. I get attacked. There's a group on Facebook called the, Coalition for Reason and Thinking My Way Only. I think it is. I'm one of their favorite targets. But you know what we found out? Every time they launch an attack on me, my book sales go up. Ask me if I care. My rent's late this week, could you attack me? That's a joke. Actually, I don't care what they think. I really don't. Let them attack me, because that way they're leaving somebody else alone. And that other person might not be able to handle it. And I simply don't care what they think. Because all I'm doing is telling you what I saw. It may not be right, but it's what I saw and interpreted as my life taught me to interpret it. June 21st, 2014, we were camped at Elk Meadows, which is at the very end of the Go Road on Blue Creek in Northern California. And Blue Creek is the next drainage over it. Pardon me, I told you about those teeth, you guys watch out. Blue Creek is the next drainage over from Bluff Creek. We were coming back into camp. We'd had to run to town to get gas for our tent heaters. We were camped at 5,500 feet or something like that. And believe me, you don't want to be without your tent heater at night at that elevation in June. We came around the curve at milepost 14 on the Go Road, and there are 2 Sasquatch standing right square in the middle of the road. Range 20 feet when I stopped. I had 2 witnesses in the car with me. The one on the passenger side was a young lady that had come over from England to be there. She yelled, "Bigfoot!" They turned and went over the bank. By the time we got back to our camp at milepost 34, 20 miles later, her mind had convinced her she had not seen 2 Sasquatch standing in the road in front of the car. She had seen 2 Mexican drug mules wearing long-haired ghillie suits, flip-flops, and backpacks. Why? Because her mind didn't know what Sasquatch was, but it did know what Mexican drug mules were. And she talked herself right out of it. Finally, a friend of mine, Arla, said, "Jackie, you've traveled 6,000 miles to see what you've seen, and now your mind isn't allowing you to do it." And that got her to thinking. By the time I dropped her back at the airport in Portland, she realized what she'd done and realized that she had in fact seen two Sasquatch at a range of 20 feet. But that's what your mind can do to you. Don't put your head in the sand. I thought tonight we would do some talk, since I've been accused of being the Pope of Woo. Let's do some talk about it. Very good friend of mine, Mr. Cliff Barrickman, made a statement in Thom Cantrall, another very good friend, book called The Edges of Science. He said telepathy is not anything more than one's own self-talk coupled with a healthy dose of wishful thinking. I'd like to examine that a little more. Everybody, does anybody here know where Grand Mound is? Exit 88 on I-5. That is the snout. That's the end, the terminus of the last glaciation 12,000 years ago. The very end. That's where the Vashon lobe of the Wisconsin Glacier ended. See those little mounds on the second picture? Those are called Mima mounds. Interestingly enough, those are called Mima mounds wherever they're found in the world. People argue about what those are. Oh, do they argue about what those are? I've had people tell me they're the mounds pushed up by an ancient race of gophers. Others say that there's UFOs that have dwellings under the earth, and this is a deposit place for the excavation that they did. That doesn't explain why these are fine soil in those mounds in a bed of rock, but that's what they say. Actually, if you want to know what they are, go buy yourself a 20-pound block of ice, lay it out in your front yard and let it melt. When it's about half melted, turn it over and look at what the bottom of it looks like. It'll look like the positive of that negative right there. It'll have cups in it. Okay? Now you take that ice and you freeze in it all of the topsoil in Canada, and what do you think those cups are going to look like? They're going to be filled with cups of dirt, cups of soil. That's what Mima mounds are. I got ahead of myself there, didn't I? Press the long button again. Get back to the mounds. There's a stretch of road, old Highway 99, runs from Tenino to the junction at Grand Mound. That road is dead straight for about 8 miles. I mean, I was at dinner at a friend's house in wintertime and returning home, it was raining. You know, this country's wet. That night it was working to prove it. Actually, I think it was working to improve his reputation. It was raining. And so I'm in my truck and I'm doing 50-55, you know, just oozing along. And I see this set of headlights coming up behind me, just, it had to be doing 80. And so I just pulled over and let them go by. And as I started to pull back out on the road, voice came in my head, says, slow down, he's not going to make the curve. There's a curve right at the end of that straight stretch to align it to Interstate 5. I slowed down, not wanting to go around that curve because I did not want to see what I knew I was going to see. Fortunately, they just spun out and we're still upright. There was a group of kids that did a basketball game in Tenino. It was Rochester, and that's a big rivalry. And they were returning home, of course, like kids everywhere. Who gets in more trouble in any species than adolescent males? Yeah. That's human, Sasquatch, same thing. I checked on them, they were all right, and I said, okay, they couldn't get out because they were in the infield on the on-ramp to I-5 northbound. So So I'll call a tow truck and have them come out and pull you out. I did. Was that self-talk? Wishful thinking. The last thing I wanted to see is what was going to happen there. One night, I lived in Tri-Cities for 30 years. And I worked at a place called Sportsman's Warehouse. I ran the archery counter there. And I was heading home after a Saturday night just before hunting season opened. So you can imagine what the day was like. And I was tired. I just crossed Highway 395 heading for my home. And that voice came back, "Go have dinner tonight." I don't want to go have dinner. I want to go home, put my feet up. I'll make do with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a glass of milk. Go have dinner tonight. Oh, all right. I knew better to argue by this time. I turned around, went back. When go have dinner, that generally meant the Double Dragon. It was a Chinese restaurant in Kennewick. Great food, great prices, as you can see by the menu. The lady in the middle is my surrogate daughter. I met her that night. That was in 2002. From then to today, we are closer than two peas in a pod. And I met her because I went and had dinner. Was that wishful thinking? Was that self-talk? In both cases, I didn't want to do what the voice said to do. Not only that, but it wasn't my voice telling me to go, it was that voice telling me to come, wasn't it? So how can that be self-talk? How can that be wishful thinking? I'm sorry, Cliff, I love you, but you were wrong. The book's still good, though. I encourage you to get that book and read it. It is good. Tom's a good author, he's a great speaker, and he's funny as a crutch. Another story. This happened just within the last few months. This is where I live. Enumclaw Health and Rehab Center. It's a skilled nursing center. As you can tell, I'm not as spry as I used to be. You know, 40 years ago I was falling timber. Probably why I walk the way I do today. But, so there's where I live. On a Friday night, I set my walker next to my bed. It's very warm. The lid lifts up, as you can see there, and I store, at that time I was still on oxygen. I just come out of the hospital with pneumonia. I was in bad shape. I went into that facility in a wheelchair and lived in a wheelchair for some time. Then I graduated to my walker. And as you saw tonight, I'm getting around on these. Okay? I'm not as spry and not as quick, but it's better. Okay? I went to bed, I brushed my hair because my hairbrush is in that basket. And I opened it up, brushed my hair, went to bed. Got up the next morning, opened it up, brushed my hair. Look what's in there. There is one pair of nesting golden eagles in King County. And one of their feathers was in my basket in my walker on Saturday morning. Anybody want to tell me how that happened? Could that be a little bit of woo? I'll tell you what, I can't explain it. I guarantee you. But it happened. And the coalition can stick it in there right there. Call to council. This is my crew over in Blue Mountains. Most of these guys are from Idaho. They're part of the old Oregon Bigfoot gang, Autumn Williams group. We were camped right there, not flat. I got up in the morning out of my tent, went around to my usual tree that I hid behind while I relieved myself in the morning, and there's that. Now, most of you know that I spent 5 years studying glyphs and structures, mainly in BC. This one was in Blue Mountains, outside of Dayton. And that right outside my tent where I had been relieving myself every morning for 4 mornings. And all of a sudden there's that. What is it? It's a call to council. Like virtually all glyphs, if they're for you, you will know what they are immediately. If they're not for you, you have no chance really of understanding them other than generically. That's a direction glyph, that's a signature glyph, that's, you know. But if they're for you, you'll know. The reason being, if they're not for you, you don't know the, don't get old, you lose words.
Too late. Yeah.
You don't know the tenure of what the word means, what they're trying to convey. You take a simple word, B-O-W, and tell me what it means. It could be a ribbon in your hair, it could be a bend at the waist, it could be the front end of a ship, or it could be something to launch arrows with. If you don't know the tenure of how it's used, you have no idea what it means, do you? Same thing with these. This was a call to council. I knew that they wanted to see me. Later on that day, see that big stump right down there? I'm right by that stump, and there are 5 Sasquatch on that hill, and I'm in conference with them. The rest of that group of people are just above where these people are standing here, watching me. They couldn't see the Sasquatch, but they could hear him, and they could hear him communicating with me, and they could hear my conversation with them. When it was over, I thought it was 2 hours. Man, I was drained. I walked back up to where they were, and they said, no, it was only about 20 minutes. And you could have blown me away with that feather that I showed you. But they asked me a question, and I turned around and answered in the same language I'd been using talking with them. And my friend Sue, I have a written statement from her. We knew it was not something made up because he uttered a complete sentence or two to us. It was not just a gibberish made up thing. I didn't know I'd done it. I thought I was, just answering them. But that was a call to council. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now we're talking about people who do research. And I'm not a negative person, so you'll not hear me say bad about anybody, except this organization. In the east, there are mounds built by early Indians, pre-Columbian Indians. Beautiful things. You see the layout of this one. This was in Ohio. A funerary, a burial spot. And giants were buried there. We don't have any skeleton Sasquatch, do we? No, but we have giant Indians. I can show you newspaper article after newspaper article after newspaper article from the 1700s through the 1800s, written talking about the archaeological digs at these sites, supervised by Dr. Harlicker of Smithsonian Institute, supervised by Dr. Pearson of the Smithsonian Institute. At the completion of the dig, all the artifacts were transferred to the Smithsonian Institute for safekeeping. Ask the Smithsonian today where they are. We never saw them. No such thing ever existed. They never came here. Jim Vieira, good friend. Put a lot of study into this. Richard Dewhurst, Giants of America, quotes those articles, shows you facsimiles of the newspaper articles from the 17 and 1800s. We didn't do that. We don't know that. The red-haired giants, Lovelock Caves, Nevada. The skeletons were removed and sent to the museum at University of California, Berkeley. Ask UC Berkeley where they are today. They have no idea. Never saw them. They never got here. That's the ugly. See that big fella? This is Marcia K. Moore. She lives up in Bellingham. She moved here from Florida to study groups who practice skull deformation. She's working with the Lummi people now. These are reconstructions that she's done. The one is Paracas skull from Peru. The other, one of those giants that didn't exist. Beautiful work. Study hers. Smithsonian. And now to researchers themselves. This is Gabby. This is to whom we're dedicating this time. When these people talk, Tom listens. And I broke it up into two groups, researchers and experiencers. Arla Collette, my mentor. Bob Gimlin, my friend. Randy Brisson, curator of the area where we research in Canada. And my Canadian research part, Brian Bland. Brian's undiagnosed autistic, and he's so much fun to be around. Unless you're an organized person, because he'll drive you crazy if you try to organize him. No, we won't go there. Researchers that I highly respect. You can look at the list. Dr. Jeff right at the top. And you know, he and I disagree with one another about 60% of the time. Does that hurt our friendship? You can disagree with somebody without being disagreeable. Practice that, please. Paul Graves, great stuff he's doing. Ginger down in Georgia. Kathy McRae. Dr. Rob Alley, who'll be here tomorrow. Scheduled to have lunch with him. Michael Cook, Kentucky. Richard Stewart Taylor, Texas. Toby Johnson, Oregon. Adam Davies from England, now in California. I'm not sure if that's a step up or down. And I was born in California before anybody started throwing oranges. Alex Midnight Walker. Hard man to get along with sometimes with great information. Lori Simmons, right up here north of us. Sam Ritchie, she's here tonight. Leon Carnegie, I talked about earlier. Tom Powell, talked about earlier. Keith Bearden in Georgia. Colorado Sasquatch, Tony and Ingrid. Wonderful stuff they've got going on back there. Ron Moorhead, not here tonight. I was hoping he was going to be the other person on the dais tonight. Scott Nelson, cryptolinguist, 20 years in the Navy. When those people talk, Tom listens. What's it take? You want to be a researcher? What's it take to be a good researcher? You need a team. You really do. Up till 9 years ago, so 52 years, I went it totally alone. I didn't even know groups like this existed up till then. For 35 years, I wouldn't even tell my family what I was doing because all they wanted to do was make jokes. Even then, I was so much into respect, I knew that was disrespectful. So I wouldn't tell them. The first thing you need is a loner. Now this may seem strange, but you need somebody like me when I can walk. That'll just take off into the mountains, go find a place to sit down and watch and listen. You don't need another person to talk to. You got the mountains to talk to. Some of you know what that means. You need that person in your group. You need a videographer because things are going to happen that need to be recorded. You need an audio expert. So many times I hear, listen to this and tell me what you think it is. It could be anything from a crow to a coyote to George next door. But you put that sucker on a spectral analysis and it'll tell you in an instant what it is. You and I have a voice that ranges from about 20 cycles up to, I'm telling my age, from 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz if you're young and can hear the full range. Theirs is about 10 to 50,000 hertz outside of ours. Very important. You put that unknown howl on a spectrograph, and you'll see what it is if you have a good operator. You need unknown howl on a spectrograph, and you'll see what it is if you have a good operator. You need a still photographer. You've got to record what you're doing. If you don't have a record, you have nothing except hearsay. You need a forensics person. September last year, the group was over east of the mountains at a lake. It's been raining for 4 days, solid. I mean pouring. It was, like a cow opened up. And it rained, and it rained. Finally, I can't say the sun peaked out, but the rain got lighter. It's kind of like living in Forks, you can tell the summer from the winter because in the summer the rain's warmer. Well, that's the way that was. They were out on the beach of this lake, and they found these most beautiful footprints. I was hoping they were going to be here this weekend. Unfortunately, I haven't seen them. And just fingers down in the mud, they got stepped on. You need somebody that can secure a site, rope it off, record what's there, and keep track of the evidence. You need somebody that can take fingerprints. I'll show you some here in a bit that are beautiful. You need a resident skeptic. This is our partner Sue with Brian and I, because we both tend to get a little enthusiastic over our finds. Sue would say, all right, why is this Sasquatch? What makes you think they did this? So then you have to step back and you have to prove it. You have to find evidence. Could we prove it 100%? Not unless we saw them do it. But we could raise the probability from 10% or 20% to 90% or better. I had 25,000 pictures of cliffs in the 5 years we did this study. Of those 25,000, I have not shared more than 100 of them. Because the other 24,900, I couldn't guarantee above a 90% certainty rate that they were Sasquatch made. You need an organizer. That's Sandy in our group. I mean, she'll organize the hair off you. She has a finger that you don't want to see, but she keeps us in line. And you need a charismatic figurehead. Is there anybody who does not know who that is in that picture? He died before most of you were born, but still you know him, don't you? That's charisma. That's leadership. And you need troops. You need boots on the ground. And one other thing, you need a journalist, somebody who can write, somebody who can keep track. Did you know that a journal, even though it's anecdotal, can be admitted into a court of law? I've seen it happen. There was a case where a mother had been accused of not beating, but of, swatting, hitting a child. And it came up in the testimony, well, I have that in my journal from 9 years ago, 10 years ago. When that journal was opened up, you never saw lawyers argue in your life like that group. Because who's going to go back into a dated journal 9 years back and make an entry that's going to do that? It's not possible. It's different. It'd be a different ink pen. It'd be, everything would be different. Same thing here. If it's written and recorded, it's testimony. It's evidence. So it needs to be done. Now, when we get to researchers, let's talk about the great. And this is one of my favorite groups in the world. Don't you love that? Look at him peeking around the tree. This is our friend Anita. She does these. She's done a lot of work for me the last year or so with her caricatures. That handsome dude over there on the side with the hat on, guess who that is? There's Sandy with Gabby supervising cooking dinner. Remember what I told you about that butt print? Isn't that cool? That was a female. In that cast, you can see the labia. You can see the anus. You can see the tracks walking in. It's all there. It's recorded. It's cast. You can see the imprints of the hair in the mud where she sat. Tell you something else. When one of our group sat in the mud, gave her body up for science, well, her blood anyway, you can see the coccyx, the tailbone, very clearly. You can't in that. It does not show up. Remember, that's back there. That group there, we're on the South Fork of the Touchy River. That's where I met my teacher, that spot. We're back there to talk about it. Well, you guys almost got it that time. Look at that sign. Never guess where that is. That's in the Blue Mountains. See how it's grown into the tree? Sandy did show us the difference between how an Oregon Sasquatch walks and how they have to change when they come to Washington one day. The bottom left picture. Yeah. Blue Mountains. Where that goes off that lip, there's 3,000 feet down the Tucannon River. One of the most beautiful spots on earth. There's Sandy sitting right on that point. The one on the other corner, over here by me, those leavings were 3 inches in diameter. Somebody says, oh, that's a bear. No, it's not a bear. And if it's a man, you shouldn't have any trouble finding him because he walks so bow-legged you can see him for 2 miles away. Shin and knee prints right next to that butt cast where she rolled over to get up. Twice to 3 times the size of mine. Sandy, on a trackway we found, those tracks happened to be my teacher's. They're 17 inches long, 51-inch step, pardon me. Barb speaking in Bremerton. Remember I promised you some fingerprints? We didn't have anybody that could do fingerprinting at this time. Do you know we even have a boob print?
Good work, Tom.
Wasn't mine. It was Rob. It was his truck. Anybody know where that is? Anybody recognize it? You ever hear of a man named Paul Freeman? That's Deduck Spring. That's where he did his film. That was where they came down to the water. And there's Sam doing what she does best, taking still photos for interpretation. Our camp. Now, if you don't see me tomorrow morning, it's because Sandy saw that second picture. The finger may be mine tonight. Look at the prints on the side of Barb's truck. What Barb's doing in this picture, I have a rope, and I have it with me if you want to try it. Marked out in the trackway in the paces of Patty, the Patterson-Gimlin film. I invite anybody to try to walk that. That's what Barb's doing there. That's a group of us on Toucan River. Then there's Goldie, that's our heir apparent. Some trash we cast, a footprint, and a gift left inside the truck. Left inside a locked vehicle. Get up in the morning and there's that inside. The last picture happened last summer. Kathy had a sighting. The word went out on the radio, this is the second vehicle in line. Barb said it was like 30 seconds. She looked around, and this is what would have to happen. The whole crew was out. And there's Rob. He's the one with the beer can. Look at that. That was found outside of one of our group's trailer. Tell me the wind did it. All of our video, we've had people make statements. What if you take such a video and then you do use the run of this type of brief and blah, blah, blah. That's how Barb videos. An iPod on a stick. And she edits it on that same iPod. There may be fancy equipment out there, but we don't have any of it. Our camp, the track there was in Georgia. That's a good friend of mine. When I was down there, we found that. And another view of my call to council. That's all I've got, folks. Is that enough? I've got a brand new book out. It's called The Nature of Sasquatch, and much of tonight's presentation came from that. It's a little risky,